Sarah, I want to talk to you about something that I've been using that I've been really appreciating and enjoying with this, kids, book, business, life situation that I have going on. As you and I both know, we have to just squish runs in anywhere, everywhere, but we also want to get the most out of it. You and I both are very driven people. We want to get our runs to the best of their ability. And for me, a lot of my runs end up being when I wake up first thing in the morning, I go straight out the door. And have you ever tried blackcurrant, the flavor?
I love it.
Oh my God, me too. Yeah. Blackcurrant is something in England for listeners. Blackcurrant is a berry, but it's like slightly tangy, slightly sweet. Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, it's kind of like pomegranate-esque. It's really delicious. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, so I came across this product called 2Before, which is blackcurrant flavored. It increases your endurance, it helps you with inflammation, supports your immunity, but most importantly, comes in it comes in a caffeine and a non-caffeine version, so I can get this energy boost before my runs in the morning, or especially I'm sure you've had many of these afternoon squish-ins when you're already kind of a bit cooked, but you have to get a run in. And I've really been loving it, and I love that it is blackcurrant flavor, because that just makes it so easy to drink. It's enjoyable, and I know it's helping me, even though it's a pre-workout. So I want to have you try it out, because I think you're going to love it too, especially if you love that taste of blackcurrant. But I want to tell listeners, if you go to 2Before, the number 2before.com, and use code TINA, you can get yourself 30% off. I definitely encourage you to check it out. If you are stretched for time, squeezing your runs in, busy person who still wants to get the most out of your training, this is such a great product to have. So yeah, thanks for listening, Sarah, because I think you're going to love it.
I'm literally looking up on my phone right now. Thank you.
Love it.
Hello, and welcome back to our Running for Real for Real-Isodes.
You're taking over here.
I feel like I am. Yes.
Yeah. You've got last week's episode plus now. I'm going to be passing the reins over to you at this point, so you can take over.
I am the house guest that won't leave. I don't know if you remember this, Tina, but when I moved in with you originally, I was like, it'll just be like a couple weeks. I'll find a place. And I ended up living with you for 5 months. So
but I was so glad that it ended up being that long. That really brought me so much joy. That was such a special time that we had together.
It really was. It really was. I often forget, because Michael and I, my husband, we've lived so many different places, but I always forget. Oh yeah, I briefly lived in Lexington, Kentucky, which was also just a super cool town. All right, so the question I'm going to ask you today, the only thing I know about this question is you and I are bound to have really different answers. So the question is, what were the TV shows that you watched as a kid? Because I know our answers cannot be the same.
I don't know. Honestly, I think they might be more the same than you think they are. Okay, so what were some of the ones? Because me and my sister loved Nickelodeon. And Cartoon Network. So some of the ones that we loved were Dexter's Laboratory. Did you watch that one?
No, I knew of it, but we were one of those houses that got 4 channels on our TV, so we did not get Nickelodeon.
We had Dexter's Laboratory. We loved Drake and Josh. We liked what was the other one that we watched? We did Powerpuff Girls, Jess and I, my sister. And I feel like there's I liked Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I'm trying to think of anything.
So it was all stuff with Americans and American accents.
I'm trying to, and I wonder if there's something to do with that, watching those kind of shows. I'm trying to even think of, I just remembered. There was a show, I can't remember the name of it, in England, and it was, it was like a fun house. And there was this really eccentric guy who hosted it. And kids would basically go to in England you call it a soft play, but you see kind of like the McDonald's play place, but on steroids, 5 times the size. And they would do all these challenges and there'd be slime and stuff. I used to love that. I can't remember the name of it.
And that was British? That was British based?
And then there was another one that was this man, and it was about art. And I just remember his drawings. I can't remember his name either. I should look these up. But yeah, those are the ones that come to mind. I'm sure the English people listening to this are probably shouting at the screen because they know the names of them. But I want to say the obstacle one was called Funhouse, maybe. Yeah. Anyway,
that sounds like something I would have enjoyed, actually.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, I was just saying, it's so weird because I feel like American television is truly global, but now I feel like now 20 years later, like after we grew up, 20 to 30 years later, actually, British television is actually becoming more popular here, even for kids. Like you're seeing a lot of that. But when I was growing up, like I can't think of a single thing that was British. Like
did Charlotte watch Peppa Pig?
She did for a little. She's kind of past that now. Okay. She's kind of past that age, but yeah, which is how I knew what a soft play was. Because there was an episode of Peppa Pig where all the adults get stuck, like in the soft play. But no, it's funny. So like I said, like we were one of those houses because we were really, and that's another big difference, Tina. It's odd that like we're so close now, but our backgrounds growing up, like I was super blue collar, like grew up on a farm. Our TV had 4 channels and you were very much like white collar, London, sort of city upbringing. But so one of the channels that we got was PBS. So the public broadcasting station, basically. And their shows for kids, the one that I loved the most, and anyone who had PBS will know this one, Wishbone. Have you heard of that?
I feel like was it a dog?
It was a dog. It was a dog. Yes. Wishbone was the freaking best. And there was actually, when I lived in Flagstaff a few years ago, my sister and I were like, oh my gosh, can we find a Wishbone episode? And it was so bad. Like they were so poorly done. Just the budget for that show must have just been like bottom of the barrel. But honestly, the shows I grew up watching most were the shows from actually, this is going to sound insane, but from the 1960s. It was the shows that like my dad grew up with. So my neighbor who got a bunch of channels, my dad would have her record these shows on VHS tapes and then like send them over to our house. So we watched a lot of Gilligan's Island, which was very 1960s, a show called Get Smart, which is basically like a spoof on James Bond. It's this guy, Maxwell Smart, who like he's like this total screw up who's like an agent. And then we watched, what was the other big one we watched? Oh, like the original Batman, which was like the one where someone would hit someone and in letters it would be like, bam, pow. It was so stupid. But yet those shows of like the 1960s, and I think my dad more wanted them for nostalgia's sake. Because really Gilligan's Island and like Get Smart were really more shows for like adults. And even Get Smart was like, it holds up well today. Like it was really funny beyond its time. So we watched a lot of like those kind of shows, which is kind of strange, like to have that sort of like 1960s upbringing. But yeah, those are our hits.
And why was that just kind of like your dad? Like I feel like now my kids listen to a lot of like 80s, 90s, early 2000s music because I'm like, well, I like this. And so you're going to listen to this.
It's the equivalent of you putting on like a Backstreet Boys dance party for your girls.
Okay.
It's that same feeling of like, I love this, so you'll love this. Yeah. And my dad was very much that way about like the shows. It's just so funny because even you love hearing about your parents and how they grew up. Because like my parents were really different. And in like the 70s, like my dad loved disco and my mom was really into like Led Zeppelin and rock and roll, so it's like all this stuff kind of filters down through generations in like taste in music and art and television and what you watch. Is just fascinating. And how that as a whole, like all of these little individuals shape our culture and like the content that's made. It's amazing.
Yeah, so true. As you're talking, I feel like I'm getting like flashes of little jingles from TV shows that are just coming to my mind as you're talking. Like when you just said something there that reminded me of another one that my best friend and I used to watch called Rosie and Jim. And it's about these 2 puppets that lived on a canal boat.
I'm already sold. You already have me at this premise.
And their theme song was like, this is what came to mind when you were talking. This is embarrassing. I'm going to sing, but whatever. It's like Rosie and Jim, something, something, something on an old rag boat. Rosie and Jim. So, oh my God, I completely forgot that existed. And it's like the like puppets as in like the girl puppet Rosie had like a very white, literally white face with red, like, kind of like, almost like braided, wrapped, like almost like what like locks kind of hair. And that's what came to mind. So I'm going to have to get some links.
Oh yeah.
Puppets who lives on the canals.
The only equivalent we had to that was lamb chops. Have you heard of that?
I feel like I've somewhat heard of that.
The crazy thing is, to me, it wasn't until, because I watched that briefly when I was real young. It was this woman named Sherry, and it was all these puppets. And not until I was like 17 did I realize, oh, she's a ventriloquist. These are not little animals. Like, she's making the voices. And it blew my mind. It's like you start things like that, you realize you're like, oh, my whole childhood was a lie. Like, it was crazy.
I know, it is funny. And you lamb chops just reminded me, we had another one called Sooty and Sweep that were these two little hand puppets that would be like, anyway, so they're all coming to mind. But this was a good question. I loved that question. Thank you so much, Sarah. Let's tune in for next week. And if you missed Sarah and I's conversation last week, Sarah interviewed Zoe and I on the regular Running for Real feed. Go listen to it. She did an incredible job, and I definitely encourage a listen. So, Sarah, I'll see you next time.
Thank you, and we'll see you again next time.